Hello everyone and welcome back to another Township episode. Today I'm going to be going over something that I was a little too unspecific about in some of the previous episodes that I uploaded. If you may remember, a long time ago I uploaded this video right here discussing kind of the cooking that you can do in the game. I wasn't too specific on what the things you could do or anything about the ingredients or anything like that. I kind of sort of just made potions as we went along. And I did do the Pursuit of Alchemy, the Alchemist one series, these 3 episodes right here, and those were just absolutely just discussing the potion effects and how to make them and stuff like that. But something I never covered, and yet I have to see by anybody else, is covering the specifics of every item or ingredient. You can always find the ingredients on the wiki if you so like, but more often than not you're not going to get too much information unless you really look into it. So I'll be mapping out what they can do, what you can do with them, and how to make more of them if you can. So with that being said, I thank you all for checking this out. Let's go ahead and get into it. Well, remember to like the video, mates. That way you can make more of this series. You can also sub to the channel and follow me on Twitch. I would appreciate it very much if you did. Well, with that being said, thank you mates for checking it out, and let's go ahead and jump in. I did forget to mention one thing about the ingredients that we're finding. The ones I am discussing today are talking about the veggies and fruits, the stuff you could find around into the game. That's pretty much what we're looking for here. I do have the list made out, so we'll be able to go over all of them as we progress through this episode. So let's go ahead and start with our first one. Pumpkins. You can find pumpkins growing like this. A pumpkin can cut between 8 to 32 pieces a pumpkin cuts, meaning that a pumpkin is a pretty good source of nutrition when you're out on the road and it fills your hunger for a longer period of time. A lot of people choose this as an option because it's just easier to maintain as you're going around in the game. On top of it, pumpkins can be cooked whole, meaning that you could place it over a fire. They might take a long time, but they can be cooked all the way through. There's not really a purpose to doing that because you might as well just cut it down and it'll save you some time, but that's just something that is available to you. And did you know? Pumpkins have 2 forms that you can pick from. You have your orange ones, which are regular, and then you have your green ones. Green ones are not ripe pumpkins. They're not fully fleshed out to be cooked yet. Unripe pumpkins can be cut, however, and be replanted, giving you 32 cuts that you can plant wherever you so please. You can find pumpkins often in these locations right here: the plains, the forest, and the wooded valley. The wooded valley I will be calling the oasis, but personally the oasis is a more preferred term for that area because it's kind of peaceful despite all the go-terras roaming around that you can easily take out if you're high enough level. Pumpkins do have a very small chance of growing when you plant them. They have about a 35% chance for every time you plant it. It doesn't mean that every time you plant it it's going to increase chances, but it's possible. Do know that pumpkins are not that hard to find because they are similar to this one, which in this area right here, if you check it out on the map, this is where I am currently on this point. So you can easily find pumpkins around here if you're so looking for them. Next we have apples. Apples grow on medium-sized trees out in the open. More often than not, you will find them in these locations: plains, forest, and the oasis. Sometimes. The oasis is not a big one that has too much vegetation in mass. There's only a few of them that you can find around here and there. Best place to look is either the forest or the plains. Apples can be cooked, but they provide the same hunger and nutrition as a regular apple, such as this one, as well as apples being able to be cut into 4 slices. There are 2 forms of apples. We have our red apples, which are the fully ripe version, and we have our green apples. Green apples actually are the ones you can plant. Similar to the pumpkin, a green pumpkin can be planted in the ground. You can plant green apple cores after eating said apple. Should look like this, but a green version of this one can be planted in the ground to grow a new tree. The red ones will not do that. But also, green apple core seeds, the ones you plant in the ground, only have a 30% chance to grow. So be careful where you're planting these and how you organize yourself, because sometimes they might not show. This location is a little bit outside the abandoned camp, as you can see right here on this map. This is my location where you could potentially find apple trees like this. Not all vegetation grows the same way in every game that you play. Sometimes they're pretty similar, but most often they stay the same. So let's go ahead and go to the next one. Eggplants. Here we have our eggplant tree. Eggplants can only be cut one way. Across the top, meaning that you are left with only the body. You can only cut the stem. It's not similar to an apple or a pumpkin where you can get multiple cuts out of a single thing. It's just the one thing. There are two different eggplants. We have our fully ripe one and our unripe one. Fully ripe ones will be plumper, wider and bigger around the side. The unripe ones will be thinner and skinnier along the side. Ripe ones are made for cooking after being cut. Thin ones are made for planting after being cut. So always plant these if you are looking to grow more eggplant trees. And eggplants, compared to pumpkins and apples, have 100% chance of growing. Pretty beneficial that way. But there's also another thing. Eggplants can and possibly give you a buff, similar to the speed and strength ones that you have seen most people use when playing this game. Eggplants give you resistance. It'll create this nice shiny spark around you that'll give you an ability to take more hits with less damage. Pretty helpful, I must say. Eggplants can often be found in the forest, the plains, and in the oasis, often in these spots. The one I found here is actually in this location on the map. So you can always check those areas, see what you got. Let's go ahead and move on to our next veggie. The onion. I didn't have to go very far for this one. Here we have our onion. Onions are ground sprouts, meaning that they have a stem that pops out of the ground that shows you where they are. They often have this leek color to them, with the stem of green. You are often going to get this mixed up with garlic, but we'll talk about those later on. To use an onion, you have to pull it out of the ground. To store the onion, you cannot have it like this. Trying to put it away in your bag will not work. You will have to pull the roots and the stem off of it to get the whole onion. The onion can be cut into halves only. Unlike the first three veggies and fruits that we dealt with, onions cannot be replanted. You have to take it as is. So that means you have to search for onions if you want to use them. Onions are often found in the forest, the wooded valley, and sometimes in the plains, such as this one, found on this part of the map here. But even with these onions right here, you can find majority of them in this area, along with these spots specifically. They're not too vastly abundant compared to other veggies and stuff, but they are pretty good if you do manage to find them. But always look out for the stalk that looks a little bit cyan colored. Onions also give you a buff. Onions give you a speed buff when you consume them. They are actually pretty good for that, and do very well with stews and have a lot of options in the ingredients and the stew book in order to make speed potions. So if you're looking to make speed potions pretty well and you need onions, you might have to go do a little bit of exploring, because you can't do it at home. Which brings me on to the next sprout type, the garlic. Don't mind it looking a little weird. Garlic has a bit of a bug issue so that the stem doesn't actually attach to it. That's one difference that you can find when searching for garlic out in the wilderness. Garlic looks similar to an onion, but as you can see, garlic is a little bit more of a greenish yellow rather than the cyan color that we saw on the onions. Garlic works the same way as onions. You have to pull them, pull the roots, pull the stem in order to store it. Garlic can often be found in the forest, wooded valley, and plains sometimes as well. Similar to that of an onion, they have the same behaviors. Garlic doesn't give you a very specific buff, but instead it boosts nutrition in the food you are cooking. No matter what you're making, if it has very high meat, high veggie, or anything of the sort, it is good to add garlic so that you get more food out of it, meaning that it'll last longer and you don't have to eat as often. It's a pretty good choice, but it only increases the nutrition by 10%. So be very wary about that. But it's always best to add about 3 garlic per serving, because that's the most you can add to a simple stew. But similar to onions, is garlic cannot be planted. So be careful when you're out in the wilderness. If you don't think you see a garlic that you need, take it regardless, because it could help you nutrition wise. Now let's bring us to our next one. Blueberries. Oh, I don't think that's supposed to happen. Blueberries grow on bushes such as this one. If you ever see these out in the wilderness, then you know you found yourself a blueberry bush. Unlike other veggies and fruits, cannot be cut. Similar to the apples that can be cut into quarters, Blueberries are the single individual pieces. You know, I gotta say, these are pretty big blueberries in this game. I don't think they naturally look like this. But besides that, they don't have very high nutrition. If you ever look at your bars on your wrists when they pop up on you, they only give you a little bit of your nutrition, but not so much on the hunger. All the veggies and fruits will typically give you a single bar of hunger, but blueberries only give you a little nutrition as they are very small portions. Similar to other veggies and fruits, you could find them very often in the forest, plains and the wooded valley. But as you can see where I'm standing in the current moment, you can also find them in town. Town just right outside of town hall, such as the one behind me, you could find a lot of these bushes stacked up along the hillside. Blueberries have two different forms, the fully ripe version and the green version. Seems like every unripe version is pretty much green at this point, right? But the unripe version can be planted similar to the other veggies and fruits. But blueberries only have a 25% chance of planting, 1 in every 4, possibly. But they provide for very good stews. They actually provide better than what most people consider to be the best stew, which is pumpkin. Pumpkin lasts pretty well for nutrition, but the blueberries actually are found out to be a better food source than that of a pumpkin. I don't know how, but it does. Maybe it's because of the fiber, but yet again, pumpkin is fiber too. Besides that, that's it for blueberries. So you know where to find them, what they are capable of, and what to do with them. So that's about it. Oh. And they're very fast to eat. Which now takes us to our next veggie and fruit, the potato. So here we have our potato plants. You'll usually see these shrubs out in the forest that look a little bit like this, because potatoes can only be found in the forest area. They're a little bit hard to spot the first time around because they do look like your regular shrubs that you would regularly see in the forest. So just keep a keen eye out for this stem right here that's popping out of the ground. Potatoes are a ground sprout, clearly. You would have to pull them out of the ground to be able to get them. To get potatoes, you'll have to shake them off of the branch just like that, because if you try to pull them off, they will not be taken off the root. So always take it off like that. Potatoes can be cut in half and be cooked, and unripe potatoes are green, like everything else in this game. Unripe potatoes when planted have a 25% chance of growing after being planted. So you'll want a good variety of these too if you are looking to expand your planting variety for potatoes. You might not know if it's a fully ripe potato or an unripe potato just based on the stem alone. If you remember how it looks, all potatoes, unripe and ripe, look the same, so you'll never know what you're going to get. You might have to go about and search for a lot of potatoes if you're looking to plant some in your own home area. Potatoes also do give you a buff. Potatoes have a chance of giving you the strength buff, and they are pretty good to making stews when you mix it with meat, so you get the best strength and damage buff possible. It's actually a pretty good food source on its own, and it's actually very good for stews. Let's go ahead and move on to the next veggie, the carrots. So some correction may be needed. They do in fact grow in the plains. I just found this one right now while on my way back. So correct me on the map, that would be an added one right there, right on the plains. But those are the only two places you can find them. So let's go ahead and move on to carrots finally. So here we have our carrots. Similar to the potatoes, onion and garlic, they are ground sprouts, meaning you have to pull them from the ground in order to pick them. And of course, like the other two, got to pull the stems off, toss that away, and you can store it. Carrots only get cut once. They get cut into two, but you can't save both pieces. You only get the one piece because it cuts top edge here off to be able to use it. For better nutritional properties in a stew, you have to cut them in half. You can eat them whole, such as this, but they're not going to do well for you. It's best to cut them if you plan on using them for stews. Carrots can be found in the forest, the wooded valley, and in the plains, as I am here. They are actually pretty well-versed areas. They have a very high quantity of carrots. You don't typically find them by themselves. They find them in groups in the plains. Out in the forest, they do show up individually. Carrots only have one stage, this one. They do not have a unripe stage, meaning you can't plant carrots again. And they also do not provide any buffs, so it's better just to use them for stews. So there's carrots. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Tomatoes. This is our tomato tree. They are a small tree similar to that of an eggplant. But here we have our tomatoes. They have two different forms when you're picking them. You have your red ones, and you also have your... yeah, you guessed it. They're the green ones. The red ones are the ripe ones, the green ones are unripe. And the green ones and the red ones can be both cut into two cuts in half. When cutting unripe tomatoes, the green ones, You can plant both of those. That's the only way to do it. Ripe ones cannot be planted, but are pretty good for stews if you plan on using them. Tomatoes can often be found in the forest and the plains biomes. I have yet to see any in the wooded valley, or even outside of it, but as far as I'm aware, these are the best places to look for them. When planting tomatoes, the seeds have a 25% chance of growing, so you'll want to plant a lot if you want to get a good variety of tomatoes out of them. But on their own, tomatoes have a low chance of giving you a speed buff. That is their buff provider. So you could eat a good variety of tomatoes and it might not give you anything, but they're still good for nutritional and hunger properties. So with that being said, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. The mushrooms. This time I'm not going to say them individually because majority of times most of these mushrooms act the same way. I will go briefly into some details about the very specific ones, but for the most part they all act the same. So all these mushrooms are pretty much closely the same when it comes to location. The only differences is 3 of them actually exist on the surface. That would be the red mushroom, the brown mushroom, and the glowing mushroom. These 2 do not exist outside of the caves. The rest of them can be found on the surface. Most of the time finding mushrooms on their own, if you eat them raw, they will actually give you a buff. Well, debuff. You will be poisoned if you eat them on their own when they're raw. If you cook them, it won't do that to you. So always cook your mushrooms before you eat them. These 4 mushrooms right here can only be cut once, meaning that you'll cut the stems off and it'll be cut in half. As for the large mushroom gets cut into quarter chunks, which is pretty beneficial if you're looking for just one stew to make that's just mushroom based. Best one to choose from for this big guy right here. But now that takes us down to our buffs. And out of these 3, only 2 of them can give you buffs. These 2 will give you buffs when you consume them. After cooking, red mushrooms will give you a minor healing boost, which more often than not, they are the best for stewing. You throw 4 of these mushrooms into a stew, they will give you a healing pot, which will boost your health for a very brief second if you have lost a significant amount. As for our glowing mushroom, after being cooked, they give you, well, glowing. Glowing mushrooms actually allow you to manifest a white lining around you after you've cooked them. They are not that beneficial as you cannot see better or expand a wider vast light around you. It's more of a visual effect. So it's not best to cook these if you are looking to make food. Unless you really desperately need to, then you have these accessible to you. But similar to a lot of the other ingredients that we have in this game is that mushrooms cannot be replanted. They do not have a raw stage, you will mainly find them as is in themselves. They have the one form and that is it. So pick them while they're at it and they will help you with your nutrition and food as you go along the ways. That is everything that you need to know about the ingredients of Township. Do let me know what you might think about this. If you guys do want me to make a video specifically on the meat based items, then we can absolutely do that too. But mainly I was covering the fruits and veggies because they all have very specific and unique skills and uses for when it comes to cooking. So with that being said, I'll leave you mates there. Thank you for being here. Hope you have a good day. Hi mates, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, then consider subbing to my YouTube and follow me on Twitch. It shows me that I can post more and that you love what I do. Also consider dropping some likes in the video. I would appreciate it very much. And with that being said, I thank you all and hope you have a good day. Hi everyone.